Hi, welcome. Thanks for clicking on this video, and this is a video about the parts of the brain related to addiction, specifically sugar and flour addiction as described in the book Bright Line Eating by Susan Peirce Thompson. If you hear some crying next door, that's just my baby, 1.5-year-old, playing next door with my wife. So I apologise in advance if you hear any screaming or crying there. The first part of the brain that is mentioned in this book is the anterior cingulate cortex. And this is the part of the brain that is responsible for willpower and decision making. After a long day at work of checking emails, of decision making, you come home and you're just drained, and the first thing you do is you go home and you eat sugar. The way that I remember this is I think of an ant with the willpower to focus on a singular thing. So that's the anterior cingulate cortex. And that's actually located behind a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, where all your decision making and stuff like that happens. Part number 2 of the brain that we're learning about today is the hypothalamus. Well, one of the hypothalamus's jobs is to control when hormones are released. So H for hypothalamus and H for hormone. Hormone is a chemical messenger, by the way. You may have heard of them before. One of the hormones is called leptin, and leptin tells your body when to leave food alone. So back in caveman days, when we used to eat a mammoth, we'd get quite full, and our brain would release leptin, and that would tell us we're full and to leave the food alone. What happens nowadays, as described in this book, is with our modern diets, our pancreas, which is a small organ located close to our stomach, well, when we eat a lot of sugar, the pancreas releases insulin to deal with the sugar. And you may have heard of the pancreas before. People with diabetes have trouble with insulin, which means that they have trouble dealing with sugar. When we eat too much sugar, and our body releases insulin like normal to deal with the sugar, well, insulin actually interferes with leptin in the brain. And that means that the more sugar you eat, the more insulin is released, and therefore the more that leptin in your brain is blocked. So therefore, the more sugar you eat, the hungrier you get because leptin is being blocked. Well, part number 3 of the brain that's described in this book is the brainstem. And the brainstem is also known as the reptile brain. And that's because, in evolutionary terms, this is the part of your brain that is very primal, and it's responsible for things that you have no control over. Things like breathing, blood pressure, heart function. And this is the part of your brain where the leptin leaving your brain gets blocked, and it gets blocked at the brainstem. You get hungrier when your leptin gets blocked and you have no control over it because it's being blocked in your brainstem. Okay, part number 4 is the Nucleus Accumbens. And this is the part of the brain that responds to dopamine. You may have heard of dopamine before. Dopamine is the happiness chemical. When people do something that makes them happy, the reason why that addiction gets developed is because of the release of dopamine. You get addicted to that surge of dopamine in your brain. They did a study with rats in the University of Bordeaux, and they found that sugar was 8 times more addictive than cocaine. And the reason why is because of the dopamine release that the sugar caused. Also describe in this book a phenomenon called downregulation, and that means when your brain gets so dependent and so used to having dopamine that it needs dopamine just to function. So you need a lot of dopamine just to feel normal. For people with downregulation, it's related to other addiction as well, and that is part of the reason that makes quitting a habit so difficult, whether it's smoking or other habits as well. Some groups of people can get addicted to a trigger, and not just the stimulus itself. That could be something as simple as a sound or a visual image that could trigger the release of dopamine and interfere with this part of your brain. Part number 5 of the brain is the corpus callosum, and this is the middle part of the brain that joins the left and the right hemispheres together. The corpus callosum was severed in a bunch of people who needed it severed for medical reasons, but then they gave them a test with pictures and symbols and stuff, and they had to justify their reasons for why they picked certain pictures to match with other pictures. And the people with their corpus callosum severed would give very, very strange justifications for the decisions they were making. And this proved to the scientists that this is the part of your brain that makes you justify the decisions that you've made. And so people might eat a high-calorie meal, and then they justify it to themselves in their own head, saying, "Oh, it's okay, tomorrow I'll start eating healthy," and that justification is because of the corpus callosum. All your thoughts and your feelings and stuff actually come from different parts of your brain, which all have their different motivations, if you like. When parts of the brain are stopped or even removed, that interferes with the person's personality. Part number 6 is the basal ganglia. This is responsible for habits that you do without thinking. And B for basal, B for basic. So basic things like brushing your teeth, driving, and other habits. So a habit takes about 66 days on average to develop. That applies to other habits as well that you might like to create. So, 1. Anterior cingulate cortex. An ant with the willpower to focus on one singular thing at a time. 2. Hypothalamus. Hypothalamus starts with H, hormone starts with H. 3. Brainstem, the reptile brain. 4. Nucleus accumbens, always looking for new stimuli to get the brain excited. 5. Corpus callosum, the core band of fibers which join your left and right hemispheres of your brain together. 6. Basal ganglia, responsible for basic habits you do without thinking, like brushing your teeth, driving. There are a couple of pictures of the brain for you to pause the video and test yourself if you like. And here is a picture of the brain completely unlabeled for you to pause the video and test yourself. And quick friendly disclaimer before we go. The purpose of this video is solely to teach the parts of the brain. The information of this video comes mostly from a book called Bright Line Eating, which is a really good book, which however does advocate the elimination of sugar and flour from a person's diet. You should talk to your doctor before doing anything like this, and obviously sugar and flour are very important for a young person's development and shouldn't be removed from a young person's diet at all. Another cool thing in this book is that it explains that whole foods like fruit, which contain natural sugars, don't block the release of leptin from your brain, so therefore getting sugar from natural sources like whole fruit gives your brain the sugar it wants, but without the negative effects of sugar addiction. Okay, thank you very much for watching the video. If you've enjoyed it, there are other videos here such as how to remember all the countries of Oceania, how to remember the countries of the Middle East, and so on and so on. Thanks very much. See you next time. Bye.